In part 1, we went through Romance Dawn Arc and Orange Town, where we got to know Luffy and his journey on wanting to become the king of the pirates. Thanks to Red Hair Captain Shanks, Luffy is eager to discover what the sea has to offer to him. Along the way, Luffy experiences multiple adventures dealing with the Navy Marines, encountering new characters like Kobe and Buggy the Clown, and eventually is recruiting new members. Pirate Hunter Roronoa Zoro and temporarily the pirate thief Nami. If you haven't seen my first part yet where I have reviewed these 2 previous arcs, make sure to check that one out first. Now, in this part 2, we'll go through 4 arcs: Syrup Village, Baratie, Arlong Park, and LogueTown. I'll be sharing my thoughts while reading One Piece for the first time, since the experience while reading, in my opinion, is completely different compared to watching the anime. So, follow me in my journey into the world of One Piece. Before we get started, if you enjoy content like this or would like more One Piece videos, feel free to subscribe to join the journey together. And let's get started. Syrup Village. Syrup Village arc starts off when Luffy, Zoro, and Nami end up on a mysterious island inhabited by very strange creatures. All of a sudden, they hear a voice shouting, "Do not come any further." This is the guardian of the forest. Questioning who this person is, they face the trial of the forest. Luffy gets shot, but by all surprise, deflects the bullet, which leaves the mysterious voice at shock. After passing the so-called trial, the Straw Hat Pirates meet Gaimon, a former pirate who was abandoned by his crew about 20 years ago and got locked up in a chest. "I'm going after the One Piece," Luffy bluntly answers when Gaimon calls Luffy a madman for wanting to enter the legendary dangerous Grand Line. Although, where is the Grand Line? Gaimon asks. Luffy doesn't know either and asks whether Gaimon can tell on the map. Well, guess what? He cannot even read! Luffy and Gaimon laugh it off while Nami is questioning how they even call themselves pirates. Nami takes over the lead of the conversation and explains about the map. The world has 2 oceans. The strip of land that divides the 2 seas is called the Red Line. At the center of the Red Line is a town located where a sea route cuts through that town going across the globe. This is called the Grand Line. And Gold D. Roger was the only one person who managed to rule it. After talking more about the Grand Line and its dangers that it has to offer, Gaimon insists on telling the crew why he hasn't left the island over 20 years. Around the cliff there are 5 treasure chests, and Gaimon asks Luffy for help to get them since he is stuck in a treasure chest. Luffy agrees on helping Gaimon to retrieve the treasures that he was guarding all along. When Luffy climbs on top, he refuses to throw away the chest. Gaimon notices that the treasure chest is empty, just like the other chests on the island. While seeing Gaimon being disappointed, Luffy offers Gaimon to tag along and become a crew member to get away from the island. However, Gaimon respectfully declines and tells Luffy that he will stay to protect his treasure, which are the island and the rare animals that he has become friends with. With this, the Straw Hats say farewell to Gaimon and continue their journey. Even though it was a very short amount of chapters, it was really refreshing and also inspiring to read this part. I love how Oda implements such silly humor, for example when Luffy and Gaimon come to encounter each other. Interesting fact is that Oda gives a slight introduction of the world building, which for me creates more tension on what is there yet to come. Besides the information and the silliness of the story, the main message of wanting to protect that what is dear to you touches my heart. And I'm very touched by the fact that Gaimon is able to accept it so peacefully. On an island not far, we get to meet village youth Usopp. The Straw Hats arrive at Syrup Village. They get to meet village youth Usopp, who is captain and leads the Usopp Pirates along with his great ideas. The Usopp Pirates consist of Usopp and the 3 loyal village children. onion, carrot, and green pepper. Although the Usopp pirates never actually cause any trouble, they often annoy the villagers by using false warnings that pirates will be attacking the village. Usopp's wealthy friend Kaya is bedridden and is well cared of by two butlers named Mary and Klahadore. But Klahadore hides a dangerous secret. He is actually the evil Captain Kuro, leader of the Black Cat Pirates. Kuro was thought to have been executed years ago, but in reality an imposter had been placed in his place. Since then, the real Kuro has been working undercover to gain more respect from the villagers and also Kaya's wealth to reassure him of a peaceful retirement. At Syrup Village, the Straw Hats decided to make a stop since they are in search of a proper ship that can lead them further to the Grand Line. Usopp is completely filled with joy to see real pirates and greets the Straw Hat with a cleverly conceived act to fool them into believing he is the captain of his own fleet. It all fails, and Luffy and the crew proceed further into Syrup Village. Usopp and the Straw Hat Pirates become great friends when Luffy discovers that Usopp is the son of Yasopp, one of the crew members of Shanks' Red Hair Pirate crew. Usopp is proud to hear this news and will do anything to become a great pirate like his dad and protect his pride. After some time, Kuro is awaiting his former first mate, Django, at the coast of the island to discuss the plan to get rid of Kaya and steal her wealth. But Luffy and Usopp overhear this conversation. Django immediately hypnotizes Luffy, who falls asleep, falls off the cliff, and is believed to be dead. Kuro allows Usopp to flee, since no one would believe him anyway because the villagers stopped believing the warnings Usopp has given over time. Usopp warns Kaya and tries to convince that Klahadore isn't the man that he shows to be, but Kaya refuses to believe him, thinks Usopp tries to kidnap her, and Mary then chases him off with a gun. When Usopp returns, he lies to his own crew by saying everything is alright, in order to protect them from any more harm. However, the Straw Hats are aware of the happenings and decide to go help Usopp to set up some trap against the Black Cat Pirates. That exact night, at Kaya's mansion, Klahadore has worked 3 years in service and is gifted a new pair of glasses from Kaya given by Mary. But Klahadore destroys it and exposes his true intentions about Kaya's estate and wealth and attacks Mary in order to prevent him from warning Kaya. I love Usopp's introduction. He is silly and yet such a charming character to follow. We get to see a glimpse of his daily life trying to warn the villagers about the pirates attacking the village, which ends up just to be a joke at the end. The people are fed up, but Usopp doesn't bother. But the moment Usopp comes across real pirates, also known as the Straw Hats, I find it so intriguing that Usopp is yet able to set up a character or a mask by saying that he has 80 men on standby, regardless of him feeling absolutely terrified at first. Nami sees right through his character and Usopp gets rid of the act. But what he will never get loose from is the fact that he is the son of a pirate and is proud to be so. It is very touching to see someone being so proud of who they are and where they come from. And to me, it is really well executed on how Oda made Usopp and Klahadore, aka Captain Kuro, polar opposite of each other. Usopp being the boy that lies about everything, everywhere and anywhere, but has a genuine heart of gold. While Kuro is trusted by the villagers, only to be revealed later that he is not the one to be trusted at all. And it fascinates me on how clever Oda has thought about this, showing that people are not who you think they seem to be. To continue the story, the Straw Hats get to the beach point where the Black Cat Pirates are supposed to be, but end up on the wrong side of the island. This is because Usopp's assumption was that the arrival point would be the area where Kuro and Django met to discuss the matter about Kaya. This results to Usopp and Nami fighting off the pirates alone as Luffy gets lost on his way, and Zoro being stuck in their oil trap since Nami pushed Zoro to get herself out and get to the other side of the island where the boats are in order to protect her treasure. Right beforehand, before the two are about to get killed, Luffy and Zoro arrive at the spot and fight off Kuro's crew. Django hypnotizes his crew, trying to increase the strength of the crew, but also accidentally hypnotizing Luffy, which results him being even more dangerous. Forced to hypnotize Luffy to sleep, Django stops him but accidentally causes his crew to be completely knocked out by the ship's broken stem post, which Luffy held onto when he fell asleep. In the meantime, Kaya finds Mary in a wounded position, who informs her about the real identity of Klahadore. She realizes she made the wrong accusations towards Usopp and heads to find Kuro and try to talk with him. The Usopp pirates figure out, thanks to Kaya, that his earlier lie about the pirate attack was also a lie, and that the truth is that pirates will be attacking the village. Together, they head towards the sea. At the same time, Django summons the Nyaban brothers, Butchie and Shan, who are the ship's guards, to fight against Zoro. Disarmed with only one sword left, Zoro fights in battle against the brothers, which is difficult without his two other swords. At all costs, Zoro prevents Usopp from interfering by taking a hit after Usopp tries to shoot with his lead star. Suddenly, Kuro appears at the mess and disgustingly asks his crew what is going on. Luckily, Nami is able to kick back Zoro's swords back to him, allowing Zoro to defeat the Nyaban brothers. However, Butchie survives and gets hypnotized by Django, turning him into a bigger monster against Zoro to fight with. Nami is trying her best to wake Luffy up, with success, and he stops the charcum that was being aimed at Nami. All of a sudden, Kaya is at the scene pointing a gun at Kuro, only to find out that he never cared about her and is only there to get the money. Kaya is utterly in shock and Usopp immediately jumps in to defend in order to protect her. Kuro gets attacked by the Usopp pirates but simply brushes it off. Usopp demands his crew to take care of Kaya and flee. The crew is hesitant at first, but eventually they take Kaya into the forest in order to protect her and keep her safe. Kuro sends off Django to deal with the brats. Zoro finished off Butchie and then leaves the scene with Usopp being on his back to guide him navigating through the forest. Meanwhile, the battle between Luffy and Kuro begins. Django catches up to his target and easily overwhelms the Usopp pirates. Kaya threatens to commit suicide with Django's chakrams to stop him from hurting Usopp's crew, but is being forced to write a will that allows Kuro to illegally acquire her property after killing her. Zoro and Usopp catch up and the latter proves to be less useless than he thought. And Usopp, with Zoro's help, uses his sniper skills to defeat Django and save Kaya and the boys. Meanwhile, Kuro unleashes Shakushi that attacks everything in sight, including his own men. Revealing that part to his original plan was to kill the crew to prevent his true identity being revealed. Luffy is clearly enraged and makes clear to Kuro that his lack of respect to his crew and abandonment of his ideals is not what a real pirate is like. Luffy defeats him with a devastating Gomu Gomu no Bell, achieving final victory. After defeating the Black Cat pirates, Usopp decides that it would be better if they all kept the incidents a secret to the villagers. He orders everyone to keep it a secret and everyone agrees. Kaya is very grateful to the Straw Hat crew and gifts them a ship, the Going Merry. Usopp is grateful as well and decides to disband the Usopp pirates to become a real pirate on his own. Nonetheless, Luffy invited Usopp to join the Straw Hats, and with a new crew member, Usopp from Syrup Village, the Straw Hats continue their journey to the Grand Line. What a great arc. Truly, Syrup Village is a very underrated arc and I think it deserves way more attention than it has now. I do have to admit that it is very much of a slow burner at first, but what I absolutely love is the overall message of the arc, that is Usopp being the boy who cried wolf and being based on it. See, I love how Oda is very clever in the overall character design, his name, the looks, and after all his character. For the people that didn't know, Usopp is based by characters like Pinocchio and the story of Aesop, the boy who cried wolf. Besides that, his name Usopp is also referring to the Japanese word uso, which means a lie. And also it looks similar to the name Aesop. At the end of the arc, we see the reason why Usopp has always been lying, and that truly touched my heart. To give his mom the strength and make her smile to just keep her alive? Please just get the tissues already. Other than the emotional impact, there are the action scenes. Wow. I love the art, the dynamics, and also the slight humor that is being added, which is absolutely lovely to see. Again, after reading Syrup Village, I can truly say that this arc is too underrated. Baratie. The Straw Hats, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and now the new added member Usopp are sailing on the sea with their new Going Merry, and are thinking about designing a new Jolly Roger that represents them. To test the ship's capabilities a bit, Luffy and Usopp are testing the cannons on the ship by shooting at a pile of rocks. However, after shooting the rock, two pirate hunters named Johnny and Yosuke appear and one of them tries to attack. Luffy fought him, but Zoro mentions that they are friends of his after treating the sick Yosuke and apologizing for attacking. The Straw Hats realize that they need a cook on the ship. And to thank the Straw Hats for their help, Johnny and Yosuke suggest to go look for the Baratie, a super famous restaurant on the middle of the ocean. Upon arrival, the crew encounters trouble with a marine named Lieutenant Iron Fist Fullbody. But during the scuffle between the two, Luffy accidentally aims a cannonball at the roof of the Baratie. Luffy tries to negotiate a deal with Zeff, the captain, chef, and owner of the ship, to pay for the damage of the roof. Meanwhile, we meet sous chef Sanji, who also encounters Fullbody but almost gets killed by Sanji for insulting Baratie's cooking. Suddenly, a pirate named Jin, a member of Don Krieg's fleet who had been captured by Fullbody, comes to the ship and demands food. Despite being denied food, beaten, and kicked out of the restaurant by the crew in the Baratie, Sanji secretly provides Jin with a simple yet most delicious meal he has ever tasted, saving Jin from starvation. Luffy spots what happens and immediately knows this is the cook we need to recruit in the Straw Hats. Despite Sanji's kindness, Jin eventually departs, and upon returning to his ship, he tells Don Krieg about the Baratie. When Don Krieg heard about the ship, he believed that taking over the Baratie would be an important step into revitalizing his own fleet. Eventually, Krieg comes to the restaurant with the message that he wouldn't hurt anyone if he had something to eat. But unfortunately, after the meal, Krieg attacks the cook on board and plans on taking the Baratie for himself. Don Krieg explains that in 7 days after sailing the Grand Line, his original ship and his entire fleet were destroyed by a mysterious figure with piercing hawk eyes that could kill. And besides that, his crew was on the verge of starvation. Surprisingly, Zeff gives Krieg a bag of food and warns the cooks about the upcoming battle. What captures me the most in these parts is how Oda is being playful, not only with his sense of humor, but also in the way of paneling. And the switches of emotions in short period of time, which enhances the humor even more. The drama on the Going Merry, the roof of the Baratie being blown off by Luffy, getting to know the scenery and the dynamics of the cooks within the restaurant, and also most importantly, a new character being introduced named Sanji. The first impression of Sanji is well-mannered, very gentlemanlike, especially with the ladies, and cool-tempered. But once it comes to food waste, we see a completely different side of him. Not caring whoever is in front of him, and to offend a cook at sea is a fool's mistake. Nonetheless, he may not like food waste, but he does show up for the people that are in hunger, which reveals his kind-hearted side of himself. Which makes me love and appreciate seeing the different sides of Sanji. During the battle, Luffy was working as a chore boy to pay for the roof damage, and the rest of the Straw Hats tried to get the Going Merry out of the fight. fight. But it was only that moment when they realized that Nami had left the place, stole the ship and treasure, and betrayed them. And Zoro, Usopp, Johnny, and Yosake prepared to go after her. However, their plans are turned upside down, and Krieg's the galleon suddenly splits in half. Sailing through the wreckage of the ship, a mysterious figure that Zoro soon realizes is Dracula Hawkeye Mihawk, one of the 7 warlords of the sea and the greatest swordsman in the world. Zoro is brave and determined to defeat Mihawk in order to obtain the title of world's greatest swordsman, but was greatly defeated by Mihawk's strength eventually. However, Zoro impressed Mihawk with his courage and honor. And as a result, Mihawk spares Zoro's life so that Zoro could become a better swordsman and show him that again someday. After being defeated, Zoro vows never to lose again and begins chasing Nami with the other Straw Hat pirates. Luffy stayed behind to help on the Baratie, and Zeff accepted Luffy's request to repay his debt as a reward for helping the pirates. And with that, Mihawk moved away, and Krieg turned his attention back to the Baratie. As the pirate thief that she is, I am not going to lie that Nami did a wonderful job on deceiving the boys. The humor in this, as well as Nami manipulating Yosake and Johnny with her feminine character, is just too funny to see. Oda is also very simple in depicting the emotions by emphasizing on the facial expressions, as well as the fonts. This aspect really makes me involved and very into the story, like I can feel what they are going through, with a sprinkle of humor. Also, a small detail that I really love is that Oda suddenly adds a page of Nami departing with the Going Merry, where she's very emotionally depicted, but also foreshadowing Bellamy. Another additional thing I want to add is the introduction of Hawkeye Mihawk. Oh my gosh, a character so mysterious, cold, and yet so strong, showing no sign of emotion. Making such a bombastic entrance into the series adds so much seasoning into the reading experience. The audacity to fight off Zoro with such a small pocket knife and ending up winning with that shows how strong he is. Also, for sure, he knows how to show respect by encouraging Zoro to improve himself and grow strong. When the cooks and the Krieg pirates start fighting, the Baratie raises his battle fins to protect the Baratie restaurant portion. The cooks figure out that the Krieg pirates are no pushovers and that the battle will not go well until Sanji joins the fight. However, with the arrival of the second mate, Pearl, the tides turn into Krieg's favor. At first, Sanji looks like he's about to win, but after Pearl nearly burnt the ship, Jin pointed a gun at Zeff to prevent Sanji from fighting back, allowing Pearl to beat Sanji. From this moment, we are seeing Sanji's background story by Sanji recalling his childhood when he trained as a cook on the passenger ship Orbit. There, other chefs discuss the existence of the All Blue, the legendary ocean, where fish from every ocean in the world can be found in one place. The chefs eat leftovers in the kitchen and are scolded by Sanji for making the food bad. Suddenly, a group of pirates, led by Zeff, board their ship. Sanji was already thrown off the ship by a huge wave before the pirates could even start looting. He was rescued by Zeff, who broke the ship's mast and brought him to safety. Both ships sink in the storm, and the two are stranded on a small island where they cannot scavenge for food due to the island's topography. The food is split and both sides agree to search on rescue ships from various parts of the island. 70 days have passed and Sanji is starving. And because of that, he decides on trying to steal Zeff's food. However, Sanji realizes that Zeff has given him all the food, and Zeff, overcome by hunger, cut off his own right leg in order to eat it while waiting for rescue. Zeff tells Sanji that he saved him because he had the same dream of finding the All Blue. However, since he could no longer go searching, he built a restaurant in the ocean instead, and on the 80th day, they were saved. Returning to the Baratie, Jin claims to want to kill Sanji himself, and surprisingly rescues him instead of Pearl. The two fought, but Jin gained the upper hand due to Sanji still being injured from his fight with Pearl. However, Krieg is enraged because Jin could not bring himself to kill Sanji. He then attempts to kill Jin with a poison gas grenade called MH5. But Jin barely survives. Witnessing this act enrages Luffy, who attacks Krieg and engaged in a long battle atop of the wreckage of the Krieg ship. Krieg uses everything in his arsenal to kill Luffy. However, Luffy fights back and uses all of his strengths to finally stop Krieg, using his foot to slam him into the side of the Baratie. Krieg's final attack with his iron net caused Luffy to fall into the sea. Sanji rescues Luffy from the sea and Jin and Krieg's pirates leave in a small dinghy. Zeff and the cooks are trying their best to convince Sanji to leave by saying that the soup he made was not good. Sanji was about to be fooled, but then he heard them saying that it was actually delicious. He gets reminded of his dream of finding the All Blue and eventually agrees to join the Straw Hat crew. At that moment, Yosaka returns and warns Luffy that Nami is heading to a very dangerous island. Zeff and the Baratie chefs bid a tearful farewell to Sanji, and Sanji, Luffy, and Yosaka set off to catch up with the others. The action sequences are so beautifully done, so dynamic, and yet still holding the tension even more to such a great ending. I love how Oda is so dedicated in including everything that could add to the intensity of the action rather than just the art itself. He plays with different perspective as well as different sizes, which enhances the impact so much. And talking about impact, Sanji's backstory, man, where do I even begin? A boy that is full of dreams but yet is so stubborn, and the stubbornness being harshly countered by reality when he realizes Zeff gave him all the food to survive. And this impact is so well depicted in the beginning of the arc, where I mentioned about the food waste, as well as the part in the story where Sanji ended up giving the food to Jin because he was starving. Besides that, Sanji being so dedicated to pay his debt to Zeff and defend him with his life simply because the crab geezer sacrificed his leg for him is just another level of love that I find so wonderful. As well as Zeff wanting Sanji to go and explore the sea because the look in his eyes when he talks about his dream is just so inspiring to see. The funny thing is also that the crew on the Baratie can have some arguments here and there and really go after each other's head. But the moment that Sanji decides to go join Luffy's crew and went, all of them were crybabies, and I loved seeing that. It shows that no matter how annoying someone can be to you who's close to you, deep down you love them because you care about them, and this is so wholesome to see. Arlong Park. It begins with Luffy, Sanji, and Yosaka heading to Arlong Park in a small boat. Yosaka kills time by talking about the 7 warlords of the sea and how it's related to their current goals. The 7 warlords are 7 government-recognized pirate leaders, meaning that the government allows them to raid the seas in return of a cut of their haul. And Yosaka reveals that Hawkeye Mihawk is one of those lords. After some more talking, Sanji suspects that Nami is headed to Arlong Park, but Yosaka explains that he was able to determine her course by suspecting her relationship with the destination before being thrown off the Going Merry. The two noticed that Nami was interested in Arlong's wanted posters, and Nami's behavior quickly became suspicious when Johnny and Yosaka told her that Arlong had become more active lately. In the meantime, Nami arrives at Arlong Park, and when she arrives at the park gate, she is confronted by a boy who attempts to fight Arlong for his father's death. She slaps the boy, gives him money, and leaves. In this moment, Arlong and his crew are introduced, and it turns out that Nami is one of the Arlong pirates. Usopp and Johnny arrive on the island with a tied-up Zoro with them to prevent him from immediately fighting the fishmen. After being discovered by 2 fishmen, Usopp and Johnny abandon the ship, and Zoro gets captured. They soon find themselves in the ruins of Goza village, where all the houses have been destroyed. One of the fishmen from earlier spots the two and starts chasing them. Johnny manages to escape and hide, but Usopp is still mistaken for a fishman and gets attacked by the same boy from the last time. But all of a sudden, one woman stops him. Usopp sees the real fishman approaching and prepares to fight him, but he's beaten unconscious by a woman who claims that fighting the fishman is no good idea. Meanwhile, Luffy, Sanji, and Yosaku continue their sailing, and as they take a break to eat, they encounter a giant sea cow that is attracted to the food. Luffy at first lashed out at this and had Sanji reprimand him for it. However, when he realized that the sea cow was looking at them as food, he quickly subdued it with a kick. The three then tie the boat to the sea cow and head towards the island. In the meantime, Usopp wakes up in the house of the woman who calls herself Nojiko. After Nojiko convinces the boy to give up on his revenge journey, Nojiko tells Usopp that she is Nami's adopted sister, that the island is her home, and that Nami is part of Arlong's crew. Usopp panics when he realizes that Zoro is in great danger. Meanwhile, Zoro is taken to Arlong Park, where he learns of Nami's loyalty to Arlong. After Arlong proudly declares that Nami is the kind of person who would even betray her own family for wealth, Zoro tests Nami's loyalty to the Straw Hats and jumps into the water. She saves Zoro, but not long after, she punches him to reassure the fishman that she is still Arlong's ally. I love the fact how Oda is being very playful with the different dialogues and perspectives. We see multiple different parts in one story. The one where Luffy, Sanji, and Yosaku are heading to Arlong Park, Zoro, Usopp, and Johnny being together, Nami arriving at Arlong Park, but also Usopp getting to know Nojiko, where the perspective also flips to Nami and Zoro engaging with the Arlong pirates. It gives me a fresh take and introduction, maybe even hinting already that Arlong Park is a deeper arc than you may have expected from the previous arcs. What's also interesting and nice to see is that Oda also adds a bit of world building by adding the geographical aspect of the island. When Usopp and Nojiko talk with each other, you can see this small panel where the layout of the island is being introduced. Also additional, but very important note to add, we can clearly see that Nami has the same frightened look on her face, same as in Orange Town arc, when being confronted by Arlong. As mentioned before in part 1, this really adds more to Nami's character, being soft-hearted deep down and not being the actual cold witch as she may portray herself as. After all of the fuss, Arlong heads to Koko Village, where he confronts the village's sheriff, Genzo. Here, Nojiko reveals to Usopp about the monthly fee that the villagers must pay Arlong in order to stay alive. Just when Arlong is about to kill Genzo, Usopp saves him. He runs away as some fishermen chase after him and the others pull Arlong away before he goes insane. After a while, Nami arrives, but the villagers, except for Nojiko and Genzo, treat her coldly and leave. The two sisters then visit the grave of Bellemere, their adoptive mother, where Nami reveals that she has paid almost all of Arlong's price for buying Kokoyashi Village back. At Arlong Park, Zoro escapes the dungeon and defeats all fishmen. The octopus fishman Hachan, who meets him there, doesn't know anything about what happened at the park, mistakes Zoro for a corrupt marine, and drags him to Koko Village. However, after landing, Zoro overhears the villagers talking about Usopp's attack on the fishmen, and he quickly tries to rush back to Arlong Park. However, Zoro is already too late as the fishmen captured Usopp and threatened to kill him. Nami, who happens to arrive at the scene, threatens to kill Usopp herself. Usopp tries to escape with the smoke bomb, but Nami catches him, stabs him with a knife, and throws him into the sea to drown. This convinces Arlong and the fishmen that she is actually one of them, while Johnny is looking in horror from a distance. Luffy and the others eventually reach the island and encounter Zoro before Johnny arrives and tells the group what happened to Usopp. Nami soon meets them and instructs the group to get the ship and leave the island immediately, while reminding them that she has just teamed up with Luffy over the treasure only. When Luffy refuses, Nami angrily leaves. And Johnny and Yosaku also break up because they don't want to get killed by the fishmen. At this point, Usopp is shown to be alive and well, as it turns out that Nami stabbed her own hand in order to save Usopp, which resulted in Usopp to pass out. He meets Luffy and the others and explains to them what really happened. Nojiko finds the four and agrees to tell them Nami's real motives. Zoro and Luffy aren't really listening, but Sanji and Usopp listen carefully about Nami's past. When Nami was still a little girl, she lived with her foster mother, Bellamere, along with her older sister, Nojiko. Even though they were poor, they were happy all before Arlong came. Upon Arlong's arrival, he demanded that the islanders had to pay 100,000 berries per adult and 50k per child for their lives. Bellamere was unable to pay this expense and was only able to collect 100k berries. And even though the two girls were hiding, she decided to sacrifice her own life so that they could live. Arlong agreed on Bellamere's terms and killed Bellamere in front of the two girls. Furthermore, Arlong decided to take Nami with him, thinking that Nami's map-making skills would be useful. Afterwards, Nojiko finds Nami in Bellamere's grave, and Nami tells Nojiko that she made a deal with Arlong to buy back Cocoa Village for 100 million berry. Back in the present moment, the Marines led by Captain Nezumi land on the island. Nezumi takes Genzo to Nami and Nojiko's house, where he accuses Nami of hiding illegal money. Nami tries to stop them, but the Marines find the money very quickly afterwards. Genzo reveals to the Marines that the money is to buy back the village, which leaves Nami stunned since he and the town people knew all along after she, so-called, joined Arlong's crew. Nami tries to stop the Marines from stealing the money, but unfortunately fails. Nojiko also tries to protect him and gets suddenly shot in the abdomen. Nami runs back to Arlong and accuses him of sending the Marines to look for the money. However, Arlong denies this in such a nasty way, insisting that he has never broken the contract, and tells her that if she wants her village back, she simply just needs to start over again. And with this, Nami runs away while Arlong keeps laughing. Genzo returns to the village and gathers all of the villagers to try to attack Arlong for breaking the agreement he made with Nami. Nami tries to stop them, but they are so determined and heading their way to Arlong Park. Angry, upset, and completely devastated, Nami stabs herself in the arm with Arlong's tattoo, but Luffy stops her. After his interruption, Nami finally begs him for help. He gives her his straw hat and agrees. And now, Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji head to Arlong Park. First of all, I want to mention that the humor in this, not only the funny moment where Luffy and Sanji beat up the sea cow over the food, which is so typically them, but Usopp? Guys, really, this is top peak humor. The amount of times I can just straight up laugh because of his facial expressions is crazy. There are at least 9 pages where Usopp has different funny facial expressions in such a short time. And that makes me appreciate and find his character even more cool. Truly, Usopp may be lying here and there, but we cannot deny the fact that he is super funny. And talking about facial expressions, I love how Oda draws some of them really simple, but yet others also with so much detail that you can sense the intensity of the situation being portrayed. Most importantly, Nami's backstory is heartbreaking. Her caring for Bellamere and Nojiko, and at a very young age being able to understand the heavy situations like poverty, but also struggling with such heavy burden of being poor, is very well done in my opinion. Also, what I find beautiful is the aspect of family not having to be related by blood, but still standing up for them out of love and care. Bellamere is such a wonderful character, and yet it breaks my heart even more when she's encouraging Nami and Nojiko not to worry about what anyone says, because whatever happens, you should never lose the ability to laugh. And when you survive these times, for sure the happiness will be granted to you. And this is so clearly visible when in the backstory, near the end, Nami had witnessed Bellamere being shot to death, but still remained smiling and cheering herself up by fighting along and not crying anymore. But also counter to this, you can see that Nami keeps building up the emotion, what she's truly feeling within herself, trying to stay strong, trying to fight along while bad times are happening from left to right, even when she has to sacrifice herself in order to survive. And at the very peak, of not being able to stand so strong anymore. Out of despair, after trying to do everything herself and trying to solve every problem independently, Nami breaks and begs Luffy for help, simply because she realizes she is at the point where she can't even carry herself alone any longer because of all the bad things that are overwhelming her, and collects all of the courage to be vulnerable and ask for help, even when she feels ashamed of it. And as good-hearted as Luffy is, of course he will stand up and fight for what's right. After challenging Arlong and failing, Johnny and Yosaku stop the villagers at the gate and tell them to wait until those guys show up. When the crew arrives, Luffy destroys the door and punches Arlong, who made Nami burst into tears. The remaining fishermen attack along with Momo, the sea cow from earlier. However, Luffy defeats them by grabbing Momo and uses his Gomu Gomu no Mi powers to spin him like a windmill. This leaves only Arlong and his 3 subordinates, Hachan, Chu, and Kurobi. However, in the final attack, Luffy's foot gets stuck in the ground, and Arlong takes advantage of this and tears the gravel around Luffy's foot and throws Luffy into sea, saying that it's all a game and his crew must defeat the fishermen in order to save Luffy. Despite his injuries and fever, Zoro challenges Hachan, and with the help of Johnny and Yosaku, he manages to defeat Hachan's 6-sword style. Sanji fights Kurobi but almost loses when he goes into sea to save Luffy. However, when Sanji sees Nojiko and Genzo helping Luffy, he brings Kurobi to the shore and defeats him. Meanwhile, Usopp fights Chu in front of Arlong Park. At first, he pretends to be defeated so that Chu can leave him alone. However, Usopp remembers the others fought for Nami's will and gathers all of his courage to fight him. He eventually defeats Chu by soaking him into alcohol and setting him on fire, and then repeatedly hitting him over the head with a hammer until he loses consciousness. Nami arrives during the battle and joins forces with the villagers to fight. Fortunately, Nojiko and Genzo revive Luffy, and Sanji frees Luffy from the stone in his foot, allowing him to finally fight Arlong one-on-one. A fierce battle is happening in the park when Luffy and Arlong exchange punches, but Arlong lets Luffy escape into the room at the top of the tower. Arlong reveals that Nami worked hard to make a map for him in this room with blood, sweat, and tears. When Arlong announces that Luffy can't use Nami as he wants, this proves to be a turning point, as Luffy begins destroying the room that has saddened Nami for so many years. Arlong tries to stop him with a final attack, but Luffy takes the attack and smashes Arlong into the tower, ultimately defeating him and destroying the park in the process. At first, everyone thinks Luffy is dead, but when Luffy appeared from the rubble, he shouted, "Nami, you are my friend." And she wholeheartedly agrees with him. The villagers then celebrate their freedom, but it is almost ruined by Nezumi, who tries to take Arlong's money for himself. A quick punch from Nami and the rest of the Straw Hat Pirates convinces him otherwise. Nezumi retreats and vows revenge on Luffy, and so reports Luffy's victory to the Navy base. Afterwards, the villagers throw a party to celebrate their win. Luffy finds Genzo at Belimir's graveyard, where he makes Luffy promise not to take Nami's smile. Otherwise, he will hunt him down and kill him himself. Nami gets a new tangerine and pinwheel tattoo to replace the Arlong's tattoo. And the next day, Johnny and Yosaku say goodbye to the Straw Hats since they are bounty hunters, and it would be inappropriate for them to travel with pirates. As the crew prepares to depart, they discover that Nami has not yet arrived. Nami yells for them to leave as she runs towards the port. This confuses the villagers and they try to stop her to say goodbye, but she rushes past them and jumps onto the ship. She pulls up her shirt and reveals that she stole the wallets of every single villager she passed. And they all yelled, "You brat!" Despite the disbelief and the anger, they say goodbye to her and the Straw Hat Pirates as they leave the island. As Nojiko watches them, she notices that Genzo is no longer wearing the pinwheel he once wore on his head to make Nami laugh when she was a baby and to cheer her up as an adult. When asked, Genzo tells Nojiko that it is no longer needed. Overall, what can I say about Arlong Park? It is an amazing arc, really. The fact how Oda depicts oppression and also shows other topics like the experience of poverty, but also explores the bonds of friendship and resilience when being so oppressed is so impressive. And when the Straw Hats get to know about Nami's past, still then they are even more encouraged to stand up for her and be loyal towards her, since they consider her a member of the crew. This is such a beautiful demonstration of camaraderie, and that the strength lies not in the individual prowess, but in the fact of forging bonds between allies. With Luffy's victory of defeating Arlong, the Kokoyashi village is now finally free. Free from the oppression, free from all miserable times that they had to go through, and so is Nami. Nami finally finds the courage to confront her past and her fears, and embrace her new era of freedom. What an impactful arc this is, and Arlong Park truly hit my heart in ways that I can say that this is one of my favorite arcs so far. LogueTown. LogueTown starts off with the Straw Hat Pirates wandering around on the deck of the Going Merry when a flyer with a bounty of 30 million berries onto Luffy's head appears from the newspaper Nami was reading. Luffy is thrilled about this, but Nami tells him that it will cause even more stress to the crew since people are now chasing him. Later, Zoro discovers an island which turns out to be LogueTown. It is the last stop on the East Blue before the Grand Line, and the birthplace and final resting place of the infamous pirate Gold D. Roger. The crew decides to stop to get supplies. Meanwhile, Luffy's wanted poster arrives in his hometown. The villagers are overjoyed that Luffy has fulfilled his dream, but the mayor, who was against the idea of Luffy becoming a pirate, considered this more destiny than a dream. In the meantime, Mihawk also gives Shanks a poster and celebrates Luffy's arrival with the party. Returning to LogueTown, Zoro encounters Tashigi while purchasing a new sword to replace the one destroyed by Mihawk. Tashigi helps Zoro to get a new sword and identifies the sword Zoro chose is the third Kitetsu. The shop owner Ipponmatsu points out the curse associated with the sword and refuses to sell it to Zoro. Zoro decides to try his luck against the sword curse and extend his arm by throwing his sword into the air. To his surprise, the blade circled around his arm and landed without cutting it off. Ipponmatsu respects Zoro's good fortune and skill and allows him to give him the family heirloom and the best sword in his shop, which is called Yubashiri, before entrusting him with the blade. At the same time, Sanji buys a giant fish for the crew, Usopp buys more supplies, ammunition and goggles, and Nami gets a bunch of clothing. Luffy, on the other hand, heads to the execution stand where Gold D. Roger was executed. As he climbs to the stand and admires the view from the stand, a woman calls him out and seems to recognize Luffy. But he has no idea who she is. A piece of the fountain in the town square breaks and hits her, only for the pieces to slide off her body. Her true identity is Elfida, the first pirate Luffy met during his travels. Now that she has eaten the Subesube no Mi fruit, her body shape can drastically change. But she is not alone either. Another famous pirate, Buggy, makes his presence noticeable. While the Buggy pirates hold the town square hostage, Kabachi ambushes Luffy on the platform, handcuffs him, and Buggy shouts that this is Luffy's execution. At a marine base in the town, one of the men reports to the captain of the pirate activity in the city. Captain Smoker, who is known for not letting the pirates leave the city undefeated, decide to wait for Luffy's execution to arrive. The rest of the Straw Hats also find out what is going on, and Zoro and Sanji go to help Luffy, while Nami and Usopp prepare the ship to leave as they discover a storm is approaching the island. Zoro and Sanji arrive at the execution site and they try to fight the pirates that are led by Buggy. But it doesn't seem to work as Buggy starts pointing his sword at Luffy's head. When all seems lost, Luffy smiles and tells them that it seems like it's all over for him. However, at the last moment, lightning strikes Buggy's sword and destroys the platform, freeing Luffy without a scratch. after which he, Zoro, and Sanji make their way to the Going Merry. Smoker, who was watching all along, seemed upset, and he realized that the way Luffy laughed in the face of death looked exactly how Goldie Roger reacted before his execution. Buggy, his crew, and Alfida attempt to escape after recovering from the shock, but Smoker defeats them and they get captured by the Marines. Arriving on the Going Merry, Nami and Usopp deal with Moji and the Lion Richie, who attempt to burn down the ship. The other Straw Hat Pirates also encounter Tashigi and Smoker, who confronts Luffy and Sanji, who cannot attack with their Devil Fruit abilities. However, the two were saved by a mysterious person, and Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji were able to reach the ship unhindered. Smoker and Tashigi decide to leave their post to follow them. Meanwhile, Buggy and his friends, who escaped from the Marines during the battle, decide to go follow Luffy to the Grand Line. Guided by the storm, at the lighthouse in sight, the Going Merry soon approaches its long-awaited destination. As the ship approaches the entrance of the Grand Line, the Straw Hat Pirates perform a kind of ritual by placing one foot on a barrel and reciting a dream. Sanji willing to find the All Blue, Luffy becoming the king of the pirates, Zoro the world's strongest swordsman, Nami being able to draw the ultimate map of the world, and Usopp becoming the brave warrior of the sea. I like how LogueTown is a refreshing arc in between the main arcs. It's something new and we get to see old characters like Buggy and Alfida again, which adds more depth to the story, since Oda clearly shows that every character he makes isn't just for the fun of it. Besides that, we get introduced to a new character again, which is Smoker. LogueTown is a great summary, I can say, of everything that has happened so far in the series. As mentioned, we not only get referred back to old characters, but also old events. One Piece starting off with the story of Goldie Roger, the infamous king of the pirates, and the Straw Hats now being there, is a really nice touch of detail that Oda is referring back to, since Luffy is aiming on becoming the king of the pirates now. It's like LogueTown being some sort of pilgrimage where Luffy participates to see Roger's execution platform. But also, we can see LogueTown as a new beginning, the time where it all started and where Luffy will start further on from now. This was part 2 of the East Blue Saga. And let me know in the comments below which part you enjoyed the most of the East Blue Saga. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you all in my next video. Bye bye!